All right, 9:02. We got started a little bit late, but I think we're good. This is a different edition of Film Study, kind of an experimental version of Film Study, as we're trying to do something live on Twitter, Facebook. I think we might even have it on YouTube and Twitch. Wherever you guys are, we're going to get this video out to you. So we're just going to roll right into it. Ken McKusick, how you doing?
Life's good, Josh. How about you? Life's good, Josh. How about you?
Good. This is fun. We've talked about doing video for a while. It's fun that we can get it started now. If you guys have any questions during this presentation where Ken's really going to dig into these defensive packages, if you got any questions, you can put them in the Facebook comments. You can put them on Twitter using the hashtag FilmStudyMailbag. And I'm going to be monitoring those questions as we go along. I'll help kind of call out your questions. So get your questions in so we can help address and make this as helpful as ever. All right, Ken, I see you got your laser pointer up there now. You're ready to get started. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Josh. Okay, great. We actually have very little video in this, but there's still pictures. And the goal is give an overview of the defensive packages in 2018. We all know there might be some changes next year, but there really have not been too many changes, even with Wink Martindale coming in as the defensive coordinator. And we want to go through each of those and talk about when do the Ravens use them, how often do they use them, what are the advantages of each, and put you in a position where you can look at the defense, very quickly identify the packages. So that's the goal. It's really a everyday fan presentation from that point of view. If you want to do your own play chart, if you want to get into some football analytics and chart who's on the field for defense, I can teach you some of the ways that I use more quickly derive that information. So anyway, that's what we're trying to do. What's that defense? What's that defense? So before we get into some of the still shots, I want to talk about the base package a little bit, because we've talked about the base package 3-4 defense here, which means three down linebackers and four in the secondary. The Ravens actually, like most teams, have two base packages. So they use a base package that the offense dictates. So when the offense puts three wide receivers on the field, that's forcing the nickel, the defense. Effectively, it's very difficult for the defense to cover three wide receivers if they have to put a safety on one of them. Insert a slot cornerback, a third cornerback on the field to cover the nickel and cover the slot. There's another point here. Is that most offenses in the entire NFL like to run out of 11 personnel, one tight end, one running back, and they like to run against that lighter defense, and so they try and force the nickel when they're trying to run. That's more common than what the Ravens do, which is run out of either 12 or 21 personnel. So either they have two tight ends or two running backs, but they have three heavier players to run. So the point I'm making out of this is that base package is selected by the defense. The defense chooses relative to the offensive personnel. They get to substitute last, and they choose that base package based on what personnel goes on the field for the offense primarily. And it's particularly true on first down when they want to line up with personnel that makes sense for that formation. So okay, let's jump right into this. We're going to look first of all base 3-4 defense. So this is four defensive backs here, and three down line. Now let's talk a little bit about the screen and just how I look at the screen visually, or how I look at the play visually to try and understand what defense they're in. So I start by looking at the core defenders here. Some people might call it the box defenders here. Sometimes there's a different definition of that. But you'll notice there are five guys right at the line of scrimmage, tight to the formation. There are two more inside linebackers here. This is actually Tony Jefferson, who's in more of a slot corner role, started by covering Boyd, who just went into motion and to the left side of the offensive formation. Anyway, I look for these seven, and then I know there's four defensive backs on the field. And then I roll my eyes along the umbrella of the defense. So there's an umbrella of defensive backs that includes two corners. In this case, Jefferson is the strong safety and Weddle is the free safety here. So that's one thing I look for, and it's probably the easiest way to identify the defense is just to separate it quickly into these core defenders and this umbrella of defenders. This is a standard 3-4. Now, the Ravens played this on only 15.8% of snaps in 2018. So it is not the most commonly used defense, but it is often what they start the entire game in if the offense has a total of 3 between tight ends and running backs. And you'll see in this case, the Bengals lined up with 2 inline tight ends and 1 running back. So this is one way that they can see if they can get the Ravens to bite on a nickel package. The Ravens didn't in this case and went with their base 3-4. So anyway, only about 15.8 of snaps, which tells you there are a few more heavy snaps that go with that make up about 1%, but 83% of the time, the Ravens have 5 or more defensive backs on the field. Now, I'm going to show you, in a lot of cases, 2 views of the same defense. Not in every single case, but in a lot of them. And this case, we're looking at the top view, which is the view on the side. Some people think of these both as all 22, but this, in fact, is called the top view. It's used mostly to look at the depth of routes is one of the real values of it. See how the back-end defenders are playing and relativizing themselves, the offensive players. But anyway, this is the top view. The other one is called the all 22, and this is the one that you get from the end zone. And we call it the all 22 because you can see all 22 numbers. Now, in point of fact, we have 2 cornerbacks at the side here. On this particular case, you can't see, but this is the best angle to see the numbers that you're afforded from the coach's film. So anyway, those are 2 ways to just look at the same thing. And now we're going to go on and look at the next defense, which the Ravens use the most commonly of all. And this is their base nickel defense. So in this case, we'll do the same thing. We've got a core of 6 defenders here, which include 2 down linemen, 2 outside linebackers, and 2 inside linebackers here. But there's also the umbrella, which now consists of 5 defenders, including this slot corner. Now, one of the things that you'll notice from this is the slot corner is the addition, and there's a defensive tackle or a nose tackle that'll come off the field. One way to look at the defense clearly is to look at it for substitutions, and you'll frequently see that there is a 1-for-1 substitution going from, say, a 1st and 10 to a 2nd and 9 play where a slot corner comes on the field and a defensive tackle goes off. So anyway, that's the one change necessary for that. I'm going to check on some technical difficulties, make sure. Josh, are we still here? Are we still live?
Yeah, you're all good. We had a little issue early in the show. It's been straightened out, so you're all good.
Okay, wonderful. I don't see you on the Twitter box. So should I take that off the screen?
Oh,
I'm sorry, not the Twitter box, the Skype box.
No, I just turned myself off, so I wouldn't be distracted as I was
Very
fixing
good.
the issue.
All right. Anyway, so we're still good. We may have some technical questions as we go through this. As I said, this is very experimental for us anyway, going through this. Hope you'll get your questions in. We'll stop as necessary. Josh will cut me out here at some point and ask questions as needed. Anyway, nickel defense. 53.7% of all snaps. So it is the prevalent package for the Ravens defense, and I think for all defenses. There may be some that use the dime a little bit more, but the Ravens at 53.7% certainly are a nickel team primarily. So this is one view of it. I think I've got one more view over here from the same nickel. So you notice the sets on the defensive line there, how the defensive the outside linebackers are, and then we still got 2 inside linebackers on the play. All right, now let's talk about a fairly oddly used variation of this, which is known as big nickel. And you'll hear me refer to it or sometimes put it in on the articles that I write. In the last preseason game against the Eagles, they played this 2 snaps. And this is called big nickel because you replace the slot corner with a safety instead. So it's kind of like having a heavier version of the nickel, thus a big nickel. And Clark is a better run support player than Tavon Young, who would have been the other choice last year at this spot. So that's the reason why they play big nickel. Now, the Ravens obviously coming up this season will have to go without Tavon. And so because they don't really have a high-end slot corner now, we assume Brandon Carr will get a chance there as the primary. they may decide that they want to run a fair amount of this big nickel to kind of get 2.5 cornerbacks on the field, if you want to think of it that way, but still have 5 defensive backs in total. So just another way to approach this. And in that Buffalo game, it was rainy, if you recall, in that first game of the season. And Buffalo is certainly much more of a running team with their couple of backup quarterbacks they used in that game, and was really more susceptible to big nickel. They didn't run that all that much for the whole season, and I don't have an exact count. I didn't separate that from other nickels. I would estimate they probably ran it 15 to 20 times the entire season. So it's not that common a package. Just have one slide on that. We'll move on now, and we'll talk about something else. And this is an odd one that they just introduced last year. They didn't play this before Martindale. This is called the jumbo nickel. That's what I call it anyway. In Madden, if you play that, they call this the 3-3-5 nickel. There is actually no common terminology that I have available. I talked to a Bears intern. They call it penny there as they chart their plays. But here's the main characteristic is this. You still get the nickel defense, so run your eyes along the outside of the umbrella again. You see these 5 defensive backs are on the field, including Tavon. And they still also have 3 down linemen. So Ricard, Pierce, and I'm not sure if that's Wormley or who it is exactly, probably Wormley, are there. But then they also have 2 outside linebackers. So there's only 1 inside linebacker, which is where they make the sacrifice. Now, I thought this was interesting here because the jumbo nickel is intended to help you put out a better run defense with still using the nickel, because it gives you that extra down lineman. Very hard to run on that, of course. But if they break through, then you've only got 1 inside linebacker to fill gaps. So there is some risk there. And what you need safeties who really know what you're doing. So in this case, I think it's particularly appropriate that you see Mosley here pointing back at Tony Jefferson and saying, basically, you know your assignment here. I'm not. I can guess. We don't have a second inside linebacker here, so you need to fill quickly. And I thought that was just an interesting shot that it came up that way. Good key reading by that strong safety in particular, absolutely essential to make this defense work. So that's one you'll occasionally see. And if you're looking for it on the field, probably the better angle to see it from is this, where it really looks odd that there is only 1 inside linebacker behind the 3 defensive linemen and two outside linebackers here. So 2 ways to look at the same thing. And it's probably more evident from this second of the 2. All right, let's move on here. Now, this is one of my favorites, of course. You hear me talk about the dime defense all the time, and this is the Ravens in the dime. And a number of things come up. First of all, dime package is a pass defense package, so it's used primarily in obvious passing situations. You might also use it at the end of the half when the other team has to move a long way in, say, a minute or a minute and a half, and you really need to defend against the pass. Certainly in the fourth quarter, you can move to an all-dime situation when the other team is a touchdown or 2 down in the final minutes, and you know they have to pass. It's a defense that has more flexibility, certainly in terms of coverages, with the addition of one particular player. I'll go to the next slide to show this, Anthony Levine, who lines up in the middle of the field, effectively as a second inside linebacker. So Levine comes in on this play, or the dime back does, and replaces your weak side linebacker while your Mike linebacker still stays in the game. In this case, obviously, C.J. Mosley. So the flexibility this offers is fairly significant because Levine obviously brings all sorts of coverage flexibility because he's perfectly capable of covering a running back, a tight end man-to-man, dropping into a short zone, but he can also rush the passer. Now, why is that important? Well, on third and medium, or in particular, it's more important to get a quick pressure than just about anything else because you have 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 7. In the NFL, quick release times and quick passes to get that first down are king. Quarterbacks have much higher accuracy than they used to in throwing those passes and completing them. So the key is really, and onus is on the defense to generate that quick pressure. Now, a linebacker has a better chance to beat a running back for pressure, but the best way to get a quick pressure is to get an unblocked free runner. And by having Levine on the field, not only can he rush the passer to create that free runner, but you also have more options in terms of guys you would bring from the edge or overloading perhaps to get that quick pressure on third and short. So a lot of things you could do. Anthony Levine, obviously the key to this defense, had a huge year last year. It was the best year of any dime defender in Ravens history. And going back to the beginning, Corey Harris and Chad Williams had some great years, but Levine in 2018 was the best there ever was as a dime for the Ravens. Let me see anything else I need to cover on this here. 28.5% of the snaps in 2018 were of this dime variety, so it's 293. They played the dime defense almost twice as often as they play that base 3-4. So that gives you an idea of just how important this is. Dean Pease' early years, he was with the Ravens as defensive coordinator 6 years. They played the dime defense only 3% of the time, dime or quarter, only 3% of the time from 2012 through 2017. In 2018, Levine's value was finally realized, and they went back to playing a fair amount of dime. There are a lot of reasons why I like it more than playing the nickel on passing situations. One of the big reasons is it's a much more economical defense from a cap perspective. So as a GM, putting my GM hat, I really like that. You have Levine and Owasso and Kenny Young shared that position last year, and those three players this year will only make about $6 million. They made less last year. If you had to find the 3-down unicorn who could cover that for you, not only do you have to have Mosley as a unicorn who can do all those things, you have to have a second guy, a Bart Scott or someone like that, and you're going to end up spending $25-30 million on your inside linebackers to keep those guys down the road. So from a GM perspective, it makes a lot more sense to have a weak side linebacker platoon. And if you look at the combined stats of that position last year, I've talked about it many times, so I won't bore you with it again. But among other things, they had 9 snaps and a bunch of passes defense. You got tremendous value out of platooning. If you're an Oriole baseball fan, you remember Lowenstein and Renicky as a great platoon, and the weak side linebacker platoon for the 2018 Ravens was every bit as good. All right, move on to the next one here, and we are now in a fairly esoterically used package, the quarter. Now, the Ravens in the past have used more quarter. That's 7 defensive backs on the field. But in 2018, they used it just 8 times. And you can't quite see it here, but on the quarter defense, we have Clark and Levine in replacing both inside linebackers. So this is against Denver. I believe this is a game Mosley was out in any case. He missed it, and so it was easier to make that choice and get Clark and Levine on the field here both. But anyway, this is a quarter package that we have on the field right now with those guys replaced. And they would both, the dime back and the quarter back would both be in the middle of field, short middle. They give you that extra coverage flexibility. Either one of them can cover, either one of them can rush the passer, and you have that advantage there. Now, this also happens to be a race car package up here. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit later as well, but you'll notice that there are 4 outside linebackers in on this package to rush the quarterback. So you have Bowser, Zadarius Smith, Matt Judon, and Terrell Suggs over here. There's no defensive lineman on the field. The Ravens ran this a few times in 2018, and very, very successfully when they did. Let's see, I have the numbers here. For the race car, they used it 6 snaps for -7 yards in 2018 with 4 or 5 outside linebackers on the field, and there were no positive plays. 1 interception and 2 sacks. So very impressively used defense there last year. All right, I want to talk about this one here. This is a heavy set that the Ravens use. Now, normally you'd want at least 4 defensive backs on the field, particularly in today's NFL. But on this play, on a first down play, Cleveland started with an extra offensive lineman on the field here. You see this guy over here is not a tight end. He's actually an offensive lineman that's on the field. And the Ravens felt like they, under these circumstances, with only 1 wide receiver in the game, were better served to only have a single cornerback and 2 safeties, as you would normally have, including Jefferson, who has to cover both tight ends on this side or be available to cover the deeper of the 2 tight ends on this side. And it gives the Ravens a better chance, obviously, with 4 down linemen in a 4-4-3 alignment to stop the run. So that's what they did in this particular case. Now, in terms of prevalence, they only ran versions of this 4-4-3 heavy for 13 snaps last year, approximately 1.3% of plays. So it's not common. Cleveland ran 3 times for 10, -1, and -4 against this defense. So the Ravens did fairly well in terms of that. The second form of the heavy we'll often see is the goal line formation. That's the more common place that we see it. And let's see if I have another angle on this, so I don't have the goal line. But it's more common with the Ravens, the goal line, to have this 4 down lineman alignment, have 2 outside linebackers to the edge of that, and then often 2 safeties on the edge of that, so that they're playing 8 along the line of scrimmage and only have 3 guys in the end zone to cover. And in fact, 2 of those are inside linebackers who are looking to shoot gaps and stop a short running play. So those goal line formations are often set up, these goal line heavy formations in particular, against 0-32, as I noted on my formation sheet, which is 3 tight ends and 2 running backs in the game on goal line sets. That's a very prevalent set for the Ravens to run on offense for themselves. One of the interesting things about goal lines formations, and I don't know if I have a version of this or not. Yeah, I do have one. Okay, is once you get down here in the goal line, this is kind of the standard goal line thing. The formation that I look up, because you got a safety on each edge. You have actually 5 down, including Zadarius Smith, who's an outside linebacker. You have Suggs standing, but you have 8 guys at the line of scrimmage, and you have only 3 guys behind them, with Board and Mosley really looking to aggressively shoot a gap once they see where the run is headed. But it's very difficult when you get down by the goal line to change offensive personnel. So oftentimes you'll see teams try and run a quick no-huddle play if they gain 5 or 6 yards to get down to the 1-yard line. It's often a chance to catch the defense before they're able to make a switch to get their heaviest possible personnel in. And you notice in this case that the Bengals have actually got number 94, Sam Hubbard, a defensive end, in at fullback. So they're really trying to lead this with heavy, in addition to the 6 offensive linemen and 2 tight ends they have. So a very heavy formation by the Bengals and a good counter here by the Ravens. Now, we saw a version of this earlier, but this is the race car again. And this one has not just 4, but 5 outside linebackers on the field at one time. We have Bowser. This is Zadarius Smith, even though you can't see his number exactly. We have Mosley, Judon, and Terrell Suggs. And they're running that in a play. They ran 3 times here against Buffalo. And they got sack, interception, sack on the 3 times they tried it against Buffalo in this game. So fantastic results. Not sure that it would work under all circumstances against all teams, but Martindale had something. Just was great to see him in his first game as the Ravens defensive coordinator pick out something this special, get every single one on the field, all their outside linebackers, when you really question how are they going to make use of 5 outside linebackers. We saw lots of times where in the dime, they bump an outside linebacker to the inside, and you'll see Zadarius Smith often lined up from a 3-point stance on the inside. But to get all 5 of them on the field is really something special. And, I think we'll see some creativity of various sorts from Martindale this year. It wouldn't surprise me, given the success of these various race car packages they had last year, that we'll see those a little more often this year. So definitely something we can look forward to. Now let's see. Yep, we got one more to show you here. And this defense is not exactly the one the Ravens want to line up on often. They're down by the goal line here in this game, a game against Buffalo, and unfortunately they're lined up with just 10 men on the field. And you can kind of see they've got 5 are at the line of scrimmage here, and then another 5 umbrellaing over those guys, and they don't have the proper number on the field. Now the great thing was Zadarius Smith still stopped this play for a loss of 2. It really should have been a sack. But it really should have been called a sack, but was not. Interestingly enough, the Ravens had pretty good success stopping plays when they had 10 men on the field. They lined up 4 times that way in 2018. 4 times they played short. PFF did a study a couple of years ago and published the results saying that they had 32 times. There were 32 occurrences in the league where a defense had lined up with just 10 men on the field. 16 of them were the Arizona Cardinals, who play a lot of dime. The Ravens, unfortunately, lined up 4 times short last year, which is obviously about 4 times the share they should have had. So not a good look for the Ravens, not what they want to do, but it does happen occasionally. And particularly if you're charting players, you want to make sure you capture this when you can and get it done. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to just talk about this, and we'll jump to some questions here. The person I cannot do this without is Maureen, my wife, and she does a wonderful job with all sorts of note taking at home. But also, when we're at the games, even a rainy game, she'll find a way to record the secondary for me. So this is Maureen, and for that Buffalo game, she's scoring inside a plastic bag to try and write down the members of the secondary. So I just want to make sure she gets the due credit here for all the effort she puts in on this with me. Thanks, Maureen. Anyway, guys, I think we'll go and we'll have questions now. If there's anything, Josh, to go through.
There are not any questions right now. I believe you've been doing a great job explaining it, so people have been just following along.
Okay, well, that's great. If you are, we're going to have this out on the website. The recording will be there so people can look at it. So if you watch it again, you have questions, stick them out there. I'll try and answer them directly, and we'll look at it then.
Yeah, this video is going to be posted. It'll stay on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll end up putting it up on filmstudyravens.com as well. So it'll be out there, and pretty good first experiment to see how this whole live streaming thing works. So if you like this, if you want more of this for our regular shows, you just let us know.
Yes, please do. Josh mentioned filmstudyravens.com. The articles are out there. The podcasts are out there. We're going to have some additional charts that are put out there. I did get the question about adding a chart for pass rush, and we're going to do a little bit about this year. We do have a presentation, if people would like to see it, on pass rush comparisons between Pease, Martindale, and also Rex Ryan involved. So if you want to go through a little bit of Ravens history, we'll have a chance to do that hopefully in the coming weeks.
All right, and of course we'll have brand new episodes of the podcast out this weekend, Friday and Saturday. Ken, do you know who's joining us this weekend?
Yes, actually it's just Friday. We're doing a show, and this is roster cutdown week.
Because of cutdowns, of course.
Exactly. So it's one article, and it'll cover fewer players than it normally does, because a lot of the people who've made the team won't be playing, of course, and a lot of the people even who are on the fringe of the roster won't get too much playing time. But there will be some players who are still playing for roster spots. We'll talk about that. And then on Friday, around 4 p.m., we're taping a show with Vaz Laricos of Baltimore Beattown, and that'll be an opportunity to put our roster prediction in place. You can still use it for your Ravens roster guests on their contest. I hope they're still having that this year. That's been a great thing in the past. But anyway.
But you haven't won it yet.
I have not won it, no. And I did meet a guy on Twitter who had run it and had pictures of himself, and I'm happy for him. You win a free jersey, I think might be autographed, so it's a good item.
All right, that's exciting. And of course, we'll figure out something to do the following week as we wait for the first game.
Yeah, we'll have the first of our Know Your Foe episodes coming up before the Dolphins game, and have a really good guest. Travis Wingfield is a terrific analyst who covers the Miami Dolphins on Locked On Dolphins, and we really look forward to having him for that. We're going to talk a lot of very deep, nerdy football strategy during that. It's mostly, he'll be doing most of the talking to talk about how the Dolphins normally line up against various opponents, and it's really to learn the Dolphins personnel, and that's what the Know Your Foe series is about.
Gotcha. All right, Ken, before we get out of here, how about one quick question that came in a little late from Nick Blevins over on Facebook, who's wondering, Ken, how would you want to see the Ravens defend the Cardinals with their 4-wide package?
Oh, that's a great question. What we saw in the game, let's go back to one of the obvious ones. We saw a lot of quarter defense here from the LA Chargers in the playoff game. And with the spread looks that the Cardinals are likely to show, I think more defensive backs and fewer linebackers is probably going to be the ideal situation. In fact, for that game, and I know the Ravens have said they'll do it on a game-by-game basis, but they also said that Peanut is getting the green dot, and it's been an inside linebacker all of preseason. But for that game in particular, there's probably never been a better opportunity to have Tony Jefferson call the signals and allow for some of this quarter package transitions and get the quarter package on the field and replace both of the inside linebackers in so doing. So give you a lot more pass rush flexibility, some spy flexibility to deal with Kyler Murray. But Kyler Murray had a pretty bad game in his first outing, was a lot better in the last game. So it'll be interesting to see what he brings in game 2. But we're certainly expecting a very fun, fast-paced game.
All right. Thank you, Ken. You know what's exciting about doing something live is as we close out the show, I can make a comment and tell people to go check out Madison because the Orioles are playing really well tonight against the Nats, and you get to see Hunter Harvey pitch right now, which has been always fun.
Very good. So he's hit 100 miles an hour so far since he came up?
Multiple times, yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Now, he just gave up a triple to Trey Turner, but who doesn't give up a triple to Trey Turner? So,
all righty.
All right, Ken. Well, we will speak soon. Enjoy your evening.